Okay, well, it's Darrell here, and thanks very much for the opportunity for presenting. As this slide indicates, we worked on this sewer assessment project. Myself and a colleague, Celia Cobus, spent a lot of time in the water industry, either working with the utility companies or more latterly a startup company which did a pipe puller project. So this sewer condition assessment project was 2013, and gosh, that makes it 3.5 years ago. Now we spent about 2 months on the project, and we've done a couple of things for Smart Water Fund before, but just for those of you that perhaps haven't seen the sorts of thing that Systematic Innovation do, then these are the sorts of organisation we work for. So usually the theme is innovation. And the idea is someone somewhere solved your problem. So a lot of the work we do with the companies on this slide, we recognise they're experts in what they do, but it's a full-time job being an expert in your domain, so you don't get a chance to go and see what's happening in another domain. So we often get to be the bridge between different domains, and so I think that's one of the reasons why we were brought into this project, because I think the water companies have been quite insular in the UK, at least, and experience over here working with people like United Utilities says that there's lots of solutions in other industries that perhaps we don't get to pick up. So there's a lot of words on this slide, but the basic premise of the study we did back in 2013 was really twofold. So overall, really trying to reduce the cost of assessing underground sewers, and then there were two parts to the study. One was basically collecting the data, so the devices that are going to go into the sewer and are going to take images of what's happening in the sewer, and then the second part, the other underlying part on this slide, is the data interpretation part, so basically algorithms for interpreting whatever images are coming in, whether it's a visual image or whether it's some other form of image. So with that setting, then we did our usual thing in terms of what we would call eyes on the world. So looking at what's already happened in the industry, basically trying to collate what's already out there. And very quickly into the study, we identified this piece of work here. So this was 2010. This is EPA in the States. And it felt like they'd done this enormous piece of work to try and answer the same basic question that Smart Water Fund and the water companies in Victoria had asked us. But it was 2010. They'd obviously had a big budget. And so what we tried to do is obviously not wanting to replicate anything that they'd done, said, let's look at updates, so what's happened since 2010. Let's have a look outside the water industry, because I think the EPA study was very much looking at what was happening inside the water industry. And the other thing that we thought was missing from this EPA report that we could contribute to was a way of ranking the solutions. And then there's a final bit that we added, which was using the systematic innovation tools we've got, rather than just looking at the solutions that are out there today, look at some of the trends of evolution and see where they would evolve in the future. So using that EPA report as a start point, we then said, okay, let's find a way of ranking the solutions. And we configured this 2x2 matrix. So the 2 dimensions here are horizontally, first of all, a technology readiness axis. So using the fairly standard scale for technology readiness, where 10 is off the shelf and 0 is pretty much blue sky. And then the vertical axis is basically a composite of all of the features of a sewer assessment solution that we would desire. So we called it ideality, but we were looking at parameters like, for example, ease of use, ease of positioning, accuracy, capital cost, operating cost, ease of interpretation of the data, And so the top of that vertical axis is what we describe as ideal. So that would be literally the perfect solution. It would be free. It would give us all the accuracy we wanted, and it would do it instantaneously. Or we could actually go a step further, as that slide there indicates, and say, okay, well, we don't need to go into the sewer. The ideal solution is that the sewer never has a problem, or if it does have a problem, it repairs itself. So very much a utopian situation. And that top left-hand corner. So the basic idea is that the closer we get to the top right-hand corner, the more ideal the solution is going to be. So in other words, the perfect solution would be it would do exactly what you want it to do, and it's off the shelf. Now, clearly that solution doesn't exist. And what we needed to do, we felt to benchmark everything and all the solutions we were looking at was a way of assessing things, but looking at state-of-the-art systems and looking at state-of-the-art, specifically off-the-shelf solutions. And the one that we used on advice from Smart Water Fund at the time, this Panorama solution. So CCTV and basically robotized pig that goes into the sewer, quite well known in this part of the world, pretty good reputation, and so that became our benchmark. So benchmark as far as this 2x2 that we configured was concerned said, well, it's off the shelf, so it's right on the right hand side. And in terms of ideality, the vertical axis, let's put it halfway up. So what that basically meant then is that every solution that we found in the EPA report, or that went beyond the EPA report, or would come after the EPA report, was ranked relative to that Panorama solution. So what we ended up with was basically this picture here. So this is looking at solutions that exist or are in development at the moment. And I think the most obvious feature that comes from this picture is pretty much, well, everything is inferior to the Panorama solution. Inferior either in the sense that it's less ideal, but more specifically, they're solutions that are in development, but we can't say that they're off-the-shelf solutions. So obviously on the right-hand side, things like leak detectors, pressure testing, and sticking a person into the sewer are off the shelf. And so they score 10, but in terms of their idealness, then they are inferior. Oh, that was the judgment made relative to Panorama. So right at the bottom, on the right-hand side, the person entry, it's good from a lot of perspective in terms of accuracy and the person in there, but of course you've got the expense of putting the person into the sewer, and that's the thing that really caused it to go to the bottom of the scale. So if you left it at that picture, then basically you'd say, I think if you were going to invest in sewer assessment technology, then the Panorama is about as good as you get. So that's pretty much where the EPA study ends up, if you like. So most of those technologies there are mentioned in the EPA study. One or two have come along since then, but so if you just stayed at that point there, then you'd have to conclude, I think, that the Panorama is the right solution. So what we then did is said, okay, well that's fine, but we know from all the work we've done on systematic innovation that all these technologies are going to evolve in the future. And so when they go through that evolution journey, what happens then? Does that make them into a more ideal solution than the data that we've been using? So I'm not sure if any of you are going to be familiar with systematic innovation tools. We've done one or two workshops with 2 or 3 of the Victorian Water companies, but it's some time ago now. But without wishing to embark on a lesson in systematic innovation, which probably isn't going to work in 15 minutes, One of the key features of it is that there are some very predictable evolution trends. This one I've got on the screen now is one of the ones that's the most frequently observed trend. So I could show you thousands of examples of things that have followed this trend, but the basic idea is that things evolve from left to right across that picture. So when we first think of a way of doing something, it tends to be an immobile thing, and then for various reasons we'll add joints to it, then make it flexible, then go to fluid, and then end up with some kind of a field. So the idea of these trends is left to right is more ideal, and the further to right you are, that means the more successful the solution is likely to be. So the way the companies tend to use these things, so big users, a lot of consumer electronics companies will know these stuff intimately. So if you look at evolution of a lot of products, you'll see this left to right journey taking place. But this particular trend, as far as the sewer assessment is concerned, says that when you get right with the right-hand side, the field-based solutions are always going to be the ones that will win. So field could mean a whole bunch of things. It could mean magnetic field. It could mean somewhere on the electromagnetic spectrum, light, laser, etc. But what it effectively says is that the field-based solution is going to be any mechanical solution. So we use that trend. There's actually 38 other trends. I'm not going to go through this in great detail now, but there's some of the other trends. They all work in the same left to right way. So they're trying to give us a roadmap of where things are going to evolve in the future. So very quickly, the top one is all about control systems and how we control things. So first stage is we don't have feedback. Then we add some feedback. Then the feedback becomes intelligent. So it learns and adapts. Then fourth stage, we get feed forward, so the system takes on a predictive capability. And then a fifth and final stage so far is that basically the human comes out of the loop and the system becomes effectively autonomous. So the way we tend to use these trends is you look at where a technology is right now. So obviously the panorama and just about any sewer assessment technology have got feedback in them at the moment, in that they're the system's in the sewer, and it's sending an image or a signal to somebody above ground. But what the trend tells us is that those feedback loops are going to become intelligent over time, and they're going to start to become predictive. So what that roadmap tells us is, okay, let's go to other industries now that have already made those jumps and see if they've got any solutions which can inform the evolution of Panorama and some of those other technologies. So when you do that job, so you look at the trends, you look at where those trends are telling you to go, you're then looking at industries that have already made those jumps, and then you can start to apply that knowledge to the solutions. So here's the well, I'll say simplified version, but I've taken off some of the original solutions, and we've looked at some of the ones that we think have got the most prospect for evolving and satisfying the need of this more ideal sewer assessment system. So those dotted lines basically mean that, let's just take the one from Panorama, so the yellow datum one. If you follow that dotted line, that's heading backwards and upwards, so to what we've called ultimate optical, then that basically says if you take the today's Panorama technology and you extrapolate along some of these known directions, then this is where it will end up. So it will become more ideal. So the feedback systems it contains, for example, will become more intelligent. The system will become more flexible. It will start to integrate other signals, and so we encapsulate all that Panorama-based CCTV technology into what we call an ultimate optical. So if you're going to stick with optical, then this is as good as it will get. Similar idea with some of the other ones. So, for example, ground penetrating radar, which is a very immature technology right now. So when you look at its journey along some of these trends, it hasn't gone very far. So when it does travel along those some of those trends, then it will end up being the ultimate GPR. somewhere in the top left-hand quadrant. And now, obviously, the further to the left things are, that of course, that's the higher the risk and the lower the technology readiness is. So the more development effort's going to have to go into to get it into a fully commercialised form. So if we then take those extrapolated solutions, and now the idea of the top right-hand corner represents where we'd like to be, then the closer a solution is to that top right-hand corner, the more attractive that solution becomes. So the one that is the closest is the ultimate optical. So on the advice, so I think about 2/3 of the way through the project, we had a review of this is where we're at. Shall we do a down select and look at some of the more attractive ones? And we ended up with half a dozen or so that we took further and fleshed out the detail a little bit. And I thought what I'd do is just look at 3 of those in a bit more detail now, so you can see where we ended up. And in a couple of cases, I've had a quick look this week to see if there's been any changes since we finished the study 3 years ago. So again, I'm not going to go through these in great detail, but in terms of the ultimate optical solution, then we use the panorama technology as the basic start point. So it's basically a CCTV. It's digital, but the imaging capability, so the camera's forward facing, and then there's circumferential. So you get a pipe circumference image. If you look at how that's going to evolve, then I think one of the things we could see was something that's more fisheye, and then use the software to process the image, so you have a much simpler optical system. Get a fisheye, and then as I use the software to enhance and correct the image. And then the other big thing, this slide here, is integrating it with other solutions. So, for example, with get the GPS signal in there, so you can work out where the system is, and you can bring in corrosion measurement and a bunch of other technology. So the idea of the up-down curve says that there's a number of things you can add to the basic panorama. Sonar laser, for example, which will enhance its capability and its ability to pick up things like corrosion on the inside of the pipe. And then ultimate, over on the right-hand side, is where the system gets simpler again, and a lot of that capability gets integrated into one solution. So that was the basic technology itself, again sticking with digital and an optical image. The big advantage seemed to be in the image processing software, and I think the domain where we saw the biggest advance that the water industry could make use of was medical. And so the idea here of if you think about an ultrasound image, for example, or thermography, or even MRI, then very similar problems to ground penetrating radar or the optical solutions, in that the image clarity is not fantastic. But what they've been able to do is to make enormous strides forward in terms of, if you look at that skull image that's on the bottom left of that picture there, for example, what they've done beautifully, very, very elegant algorithms, I would say, which say I can take two relatively low resolution images, or actually a multitude of relatively low resolution images. If you imagine that the pig moving along the pipe slowly, so each of those images is taken from a slightly different perspective, and then you let the software do the hard work of resolving the accuracy from those images. So you take lots of low-res pictures, and use software to turn it into a high-res picture. And that felt like something that was relatively simple to do. So the conclusion at the end of the study was that it's kind of a final year graduate project to take some of the software and things like Mathematica these days. It's pretty much open source stuff that would allow you to take effectively today's images and get a much higher degree of accuracy. So you save an awful lot of the operator's time in having to assess the pictures and work out from a very murky image, is this pipe corroded or not. So the idea of using neural nets was part of that solution also. So it's you've got a genetic algorithm in there that's basically learning. So the idea behind that, for example, would be that you train the system on some corroded pipe, so it knows what corroded pipe looks like, and that would allow you to get some automated images of it's detected where corrosion is, and it would automatically highlight it for the operator. So there's no interpretation of the picture by the operator. Basically, the software is doing it for you. There's another example of the technology, the image processing technology taking place in healthcare. So on the left-hand side is the typical ultrasound image of baby inside mum, and right-hand side is some things that you can do with the image processing software these days. Looking at the skull, for example, of baby. This was another one which similar idea of algorithm to algorithm technology, basically to enhance the accuracy of the image. And that's the bottom statement there is that's probably beyond final year graduate. I think it does need a mathematician there to do that. But although having said that, the line above it, there are MATLAB patches these days which will do some of this stuff. So that's basically the evolving the digital and looking at the evolution of the software which is going to process the images. The other one then came up as a separate route. Those slides I've just jumped over, by the way, are probably too much detail for now. Let me just come back to that one because I did mention ground penetrating radar earlier. This didn't come out as one of the top 5, I think, in terms of the last 3 years since the study finished. This is probably the one where there has been the biggest advance. So GPR is notoriously inaccurate in terms of the image resolution that you get, but that integration with some of the algorithm, the software image processing algorithms that I was discussing a few slides ago, they have started to be integrated into this technology now. So I'd be more confident today that an accurate GPR is becoming a viable option. And if it does become viable, then of course it gives an enormous advantage of being able to assess the pipe from street level rather than having to go into the pipe itself. So inherent cost advantages to that. Anyway, finally, the final one I thought I mentioned because I think it came out as quite a few people's favourite back in 2013 when we published a report. So it was the overall rank number 2 and became known colloquially as the pill. So the idea of this was basically a very small, not quite pill-sized device, but not far off. Pill because, again, looking at medical technology. So this was available in 2013. This is basically a swallowable pill. If you're looking at that thing that the guy's holding there, then I'm not sure I'd quite want to swallow it without a pretty big glass of something to knock it down with. But pill size, let's say, so small thing. The idea of this was that it's a device that's small enough that you either put it into the loo or drop it down into the sewage system, and it floats, and it's taking images as it's travelling along the pipe. So it's fitted with GPS, it's fitted with camera, and obviously the power systems that it needs. And the technology that's been developed for healthcare, so this one from Washington here, obviously doesn't have a very long life. It's going to be sitting the patient for hours rather than days. But it's self-sufficient, and they've already got it down to $300. And in the last 3 years, I would make a fairly good guess that it's gone down by a factor of 2 relative to that. And so the idea was these things that you make them cheap enough that so you put them into the system, they're telemetering data back to wherever, and when they run out of battery power, then they've been cheap enough that you leave them where they are, or where they end up. So it felt to us like there was quite a lot of merit in that solution, to the point that we were asked back in 2013 to put together an outline cost for developing a prototype. That, which, as it happens, is right up Cobus's street. So he's a very hands-on engineer. So somewhere in the system, at the Smart Water Fund, I think there's an outline proposed, but I think looking at it in my notes, it was something like 50, 60K to get a decent working prototype up and running and demonstrating the technology. Had a quick look again this week in terms of patents. I think it's still very much, I would say, a patentable solution in the sewer stroke underground context, and it would build on some of the medical technology. So obviously there are problems that are unique as far as the sewer is concerned. So in terms of, for example, you'd like it to be taking images for longer. So if it was there and available for days, for example, hopefully it's travelled a significant length of the sewage system. And also in terms of images, then if it's floating along, then obviously the optics, you need to have those above water so that they're able to take decent images of the surrounding pipe. So I think we felt that all those problems of orientation and image quality were definitely solvable problems and patentable at the same time. So I think ultimately that was the one that seemed to get people fired up at the time, and that was the final bit. I think very coincidentally at the time we were wrapping up the report, there was a TV program on in the UK about tracking cats. So they'd fitted these very simple imaging systems and tracking systems onto the collar of cats in British villages, and were tracking what cats did. And again, the basic idea was saying that there are already solutions out here that do part of the job. Hence the prototype. The thing that put together was knife and forking partial solutions, and bolt them together for the first time to do the sewer job. So that's pretty much where we were. So last couple of slides from me. What we ended up with was basically two lots of conclusions. So the short-term ones were basically the panorama and evolution of that. And so I think the optical was going to be around for quite a while, but has got lots of potential for being advanced. And I think the most obvious and the easiest ways of advancing that was really in the image processing. And I think there's two sides to that. One would be the taking things like the fisheye and using the software to get an image that's understandable by operator and gets the accuracy that you're looking for. And then the second one, a bit more difficult to do, but nevertheless the solutions are out there in other domains, and that is to basically train the system to recognise that there is corrosion, for example. So you train the system and take a lot of the heavy lifting away from the operator, again, so that the imaging system basically identifies for you, for example, colour codes when it's identified corrosion. Then final slide is the longer term, and that's really where we ended up, I think, with the pill as one of the directions. The latter point, there's probably too many words for me to read through there, but one of the things I think was very clear was that there were significant technology enhancement in other domains that the water industry hadn't made use of yet. So I've shown a couple of healthcare ones, but it just felt like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of things that can be bolted together. But also, and I'm not sure how relevant it is today, but certainly when Smart Water Fund was around 2013, the idea of being able to own the IP on these things was an attractive option. So if the Victorian Water companies, for example, develop these things, own the IP, then you could license the technology to other people. In fact, you could license the technology if you don't want to be the people designing and manufacturing these things to other companies. So that's pretty much where we ended up. And so I've tried to give you a couple of snippets on what I've been able to do this week in terms of looking at what's happened in the last 3 years since we finished the study. And main conclusion there is that the rest of the world's moved on. So I think we could do it cheaper, whether it's the pill or whether it's image processing software, and easier. So I hope that helps set some of the scene for your session today. Ewan's got my contact details, so if anybody's got any other questions, then I'd be very happy to try and answer them. And yeah, I'm a fairly regular visitor out to Australia, so I think my next trip is middle of the year. So if it makes sense, then I'm happy to follow up then as well. But thanks for the opportunity, and hope this has been useful. Cheers.